Hey, Tim.
Hey Bill, how are you?
There. How are you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Very well.
You back home?
Yes. Yeah, I got back home a couple of weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you should have stayed a little while longer. The weather has not cooperated.
Uh, I miss Hopkinton too much.
That's good.
Have you put all the school snow shovels away yet?
We had them away until Saturday, you know. That one caught us off guard a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it caught everybody off guard. Not necessarily in our functional responsibilities, but it definitely affected my mood.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are right on 6 o'clock. So I'm going to give it another minute or two because looks like Chris Eberly is still logging in. Okay. Okay. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we are at quorum. Chris Eberly, are we good to start? I don't see anybody from Perkins.
Bear with me because I have one more set of things to get open.
Okay, you tell me when we are ready to begin.
And we are recording, just so everyone knows.
Thank you.
And John, while we wait, Peter Romaines from Perkins is on, so.
Oh, come on. Yes, he is. Sorry, I did not see him. Thank you for pointing that out.
Through the chair.
Yes,
John,
Bob.
we're having a little trouble getting the sound up. We're still recording, but we're not putting sound out on HCAM yet. If you can wait a few seconds, I'll let you know if we get it out.
Okay, you go ahead. Just I'll wait on your signal, Bob.
Thank you.
Must look fascinating if anyone is watching on TV right now.
We could do a group dance.
Go for it.
You lead us off, Chris.
Yeah.
We'll all follow, I promise.
Everybody just go like this. It's funnier now because I don't actually have the screen up in front with everybody's face, so I don't know if you're doing it.
We were all doing it.
All of us.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I finally have the wealth of things to present to you tonight.
Okay. Yeah, you got a busy night. I just got to get through some invoices and minutes, and then your show. For those who might have hopped on after this, HCAM is just trying to fix the sound going out, so we are giving them a few more minutes before we get started. Oh, I'm gonna reorder my Zoom windows.
Gives me a chance to take attendance without looking quite so erratic.
Bob, just checking in. How are we looking? Okay, so if we get, I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. If we get to 6:10 and the sound issue isn't resolved, I think we go ahead and get started if there are no objections, because the meeting is being recorded and the stuff at the beginning is minutes and invoices. So I think we can go ahead and get through that, and hopefully it'll solve by then.
I think you're downplaying the 16 months that I spent trying to get to this Eversource bill.
Yeah, no, you can. Yeah, we're recording it, so you can properly celebrate the achievement of the Eversource bill. Don't worry. You gotta get ready though. I mean, it's roll call vote. We're gonna have 7 votes in this one. We got almost a full house here. Maybe a full house. Yeah, I think so.
The next meeting's the exciting one. I'm ready to go when you're ready.
Okay. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started, since it is being recorded. And as I said, the first few things are fairly administrative in their nature. So I will welcome everyone to the Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee for the Charleswood School. I will quickly review the agenda for tonight, and then we will go ahead and get started. After our usual opportunity for public comment, we will consider approving minutes from our last meeting of March 20th. We have a couple of bills to pay, so our usual package of invoices, as well as the specific Eversource utility charge. We will then receive several project updates. The first on the Conservation Committee amended notice of intent, update and approval of revised playground designs consistent with our conversation at the last meeting regarding adaptability, update on abutter mitigations, including existing conditions survey, update on additional services, bidding, and then any miscellaneous project updates. So we are hoping to wrap up, as close to 7 o'clock as we possibly can. So starting out, we have our opportunity for public comment. I do not see any members of the public on the Zoom, so we will, as always, be open to considering revisiting public comment should anyone join as a member of the public and want to make a comment. But moving on, we will consider the minutes of March 20th, 2025. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the minutes as written for March 20th, 2025.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Bill. We are conducting this meeting remotely, so this will be a roll call vote, starting with Bill,
Yes.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters,
Yes.
Tiffany,
I need to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
and I thought, oh, yes, Shahidul,
Yeah, I'll abstain as well. I wasn't at the meeting, but thank you.
and I am a yes. So those minutes are approved. I think it's 5 with 2 abstentions, Chris.
Yes, that's what I had.
Okay. So next, Chris, do you want to talk about the Eversource utility charge, which is in our
Sure.
it's in our invoice package. So from a process perspective, I think we're still gonna.
I made the
I don't
assumption.
think, I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to approve it separately.
I think we do need to approve it separately because we haven't committed it. We made.
Oh,
the
right. We have to
assumption that-
allocate it and then we have to pay the bill. Okay, fair enough.
Correct.
Yep. Okay, so we will have, so for the committee's benefit, after Chris explains this, we will have a motion to approve the payment for Eversource, and then it will also be included in our invoice package so we can write them a check quickly. And I'm just going to point out what I really enjoy is that this looks exactly like the Eversource bill we all get
Oh, yes,
at
it
our
does.
house, except obviously, hopefully, this is a larger number than most people get at their house.
It literally looks exactly like an Eversource bill. It always shocks me.
Of course.
So the process for starting utility service with Eversource is that you establish a work order number, you meet certain requirements based on their standards, you send it to their engineering department, and they come back and give you a utility charge. The reality is that is a many month, often more than a year process to get to this point. So what this represents is it represents the initial utility charge that the town of Hopkinton will pay in order to establish service at the new Charleswood Elementary School. So this covers things like the delivery of the transformer, taking the primary lines from the street to the transformers, and all the associated work. It also includes transformer for the power that's related to, or the power components that are related to the vehicle charging stations, which we're doing through an Eversource project. So this $73,976 represents the town's share of that utility charge, which is calculated through a formula that Eversource keeps to themselves to determine how much does it cost to establish this service versus what their payback is going to be with you being a service or receiving their service over many years, and the revenue generated by that. So we made the assumption, as John pointed out, that this would be approved. It's important to approve this promptly because it gets us in the queue to order all the components that will eventually provide that permanent service. And for clarity, this permanent service is a separate service from what the contractor will get to get the project started, which is temp electrical service, which is usually more of a 120-volt service like you'd feed to a house, usually pretty high amperage so that they can run all of their temporary construction needs. And then once the transformer is provided and the infrastructure is provided, Eversource connects the transformer and provides the what's called permanent power to the building ultimately. So we would be looking for a motion to accept the utility charge from Eversource in the amount of $73,976.
So move.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so motion by Shahidul, second by Mike. Just want to allow if there are any questions or comments on this before we go ahead and take a vote. Okay, then it seems like we're ready for a vote. Bill,
Yes.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters,
Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes.
Shahidul,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So that is approved 7-0 unanimously. Okay, next up is the actual payment of bills. So we have a larger invoice package this week, or this month. We've got 5 invoices. We've got an invoice OPM 11636 from Vertex in the amount of $72,218.33. We've got a invoice 0095421-00015 from Perkins Eastman in the amount of $325,775. We have a invoice from the Hopkinton Police Department 25-000171 in the amount of $232.24. We have an invoice from Harrington Heap LLP in the invoice number 1650 in the amount of $225. We have an invoice 11969076 from Eversource, as recently discussed, in the amount of $73,976 even. The total invoice package is $472,426.57 this month. Any questions about the invoices?
One point of clarity, the Hopkinton Police Department invoices for a police detail that we got when we did the hydrant flow test in March. That allowed us to conclude the sprinkler design, and it was one of those watch items that we were trying to get in before we went to bid. So we were able to complete that, get the test results, and as part of that, because the hydrant flows into the street in the middle of the day, they do ask that you pick up a police detail.
And all of that, things like those police details are considered in the project budget.
Correct.
Anyway, so while a nominal amount, not one that isn't reconsidered. Okay, hearing no questions, I would seek a motion to approve the total invoice package of $472,426.57.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Shahidul, second by Jagroot. Roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters, Chris, you might still be on mute. Or we potentially lost him. There he is.
Sorry, I'm back. Yep. Yes.
Okay, Tiffany
Yes.
and Shahidul,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So invoices are approved unanimously, 7-0. Susan, the signed vendor invoice package is already in your inbox, so we should be good to go there. Next, we are moving on to a series of project updates, I think starting with the Conservation Commission update. So Chris Eberly, I will turn it over to you.
Now, this one's a fun one. So we notified the committee that we would be reappearing before the Conservation Commission last week. As we neared the end of the abutter discussion, Mike and I noted as we were out there that we saw a flag in the middle of the location right about here that was placed when the soil testing DigSafe was called in. We looked at that and then met with the abutters and discovered that what exists currently on our neighbor's property is what is currently a flowing stream that comes out of a pipe about here, does this little S, and comes to a catch basin that was previously probably pretty well shielded with some brush. About the same time period, it was alerted to Concom and also to LEC, Perkins environmental permitting consultant, that there was potentially an intermittent stream as described by the bylaw that was coming onto our project. That's significant because an intermittent stream has buffer zones that were not part of our original order of conditions. We aren't really sure how this got missed. It's quite possible that it was dry at the time that we were doing our initial wetland survey. It was not caught as part of the ANRAD process when we designated the wetland boundaries that we would be using for the project. And as a result, what it does, and you can loosely see this, I know there's a lot of lines here. There is a buffer zone that you can see sort of delineated here, and a closer buffer zone here that are the setbacks that determine what setbacks are related to the stream. We went before Concom last week so that we could understand this and take action on it. We asked them if they would consider to deal with it administratively. And their response was that in order to keep it fair and consistent with how they deal with these issues across town, with all applicants, they asked us to submit an amended order of conditions request. And so within the meeting packet, there's a folder on there that contains the updated landscape drawings as well as the updated civil drawings and the amended order of conditions. So you'll see that in terms of these sheets that I'm showing you now. The updated landscape plans include, if I can find the right sheet. Some of the updated plantings that reflect what we talked about with the buffer. It includes the turnaround that we discussed for the abutter at this location. So we'll now take this information, both the revised plantings on this side and the fence location, and the revised plantings on this side and the new fence location, back to both of those abutters to just notify them where we ended up. And we will be appearing at the Conservation Commission for them to consider this at their April 29th meeting. Because of that and the impact that that has, an order of conditions typically is issued 3 weeks after the meeting where it is approved. So we are hopefully going to be approved at the meeting on the 29th. But because that is so close to the original bid date for the overall project, we are pushing the bid date back from what was originally going to be May 5th to May 14th. The schedule for the project is based on having notice to proceed by June 6th, which allows us to finish on the scheduled date of October 27th. So we don't anticipate, provided that this committee and the town can enter into a contract with the low bidder between the 14th and the 6th of June, we don't anticipate this to have any issue on the overall schedule, and it'll allow for us to get the ultimate order of conditions that is amended to be actually given to the contractor, which mitigates some potential change order risk there if there's an item that applies broadly to the project that wasn't in the original order of conditions. Overall, I'm glad we caught this now and not, say, 2 months from now. I don't have a good answer for why we didn't see this sooner, other than the suggestion that's been made that it was a drought at the time that we were doing the ANRAD, and maybe it wasn't a flowing stream and it was just a ditch. The graphics of the topography did appear on the survey here, but there was no mention of water or anything else at the time. So it's very strange. As part of this, when we met with the town DPW, they did make the reasonable suggestion that the portions of this drainage system, which appear to be shared between the neighbors, continues underground from here north through the backyards of the properties, and also appears to continue on. It's not entirely clear exactly where, but continue on through the backyards to the south. That the portions of this that are on 147, so this drainage structure and the pipe itself that goes under the road, that we replace those at this time. I think that makes sense overall, and I would agree with that assumption, because you wouldn't want to pave a brand new road and then have to dig it up in the first few years to replace that drainage structure if there was a problem with it. So restore what is on the town's property to a new condition, and then whatever happens in the future, we'll deal with that. So that's largely the sort of outline of the Concom process. We do know that the plans have been submitted earlier this week. Hard copies, I believe, were delivered Monday or Tuesday, and we anticipate being on the agenda for that meeting. So unless there are any questions, that was all that I had for that particular.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot I was on mute. Yeah, does anyone have any questions regarding any part of this?
Just one quick question through the chair. I heard you mentioned there's no schedule impact. Is there any cost impact?
There is probably going to be some minor cost impact associated with having to dig up that piping and that structure. It's based on pricing, I would think it'd be less than 40,000 overall, which in the confines of a $116 million project is not significant in my book. And it's certainly a lot less cost impact to deal with that pipe now prior to bidding than to do it as change order work if we were to need to do it over the course of construction, such as if that pipe collapsed from the weight of construction vehicles driving over it over 2.5 years.
Makes sense. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I think we can move on, Chris.
So next on the agenda, if I have it in front of me, was the revised playground. So we had talked at the last meeting about the goal of creating an adaptable playground. At the time, we discussed the various options that had been discussed in the various goals for the project. This stems from work that Susan Rothermich is doing at Marathon to create an adaptable playground where able-bodied and disabled students are able to play together on the same play structure. The goal of that separate project is to create that, I believe, at Marathon. And the discussion we had last time was to create a similar opportunity at the Charleswood School so that when those students graduate from Marathon, should that playground be built, the same idea of inclusive play would continue at the next school. The Traverse, the landscape architect, went through a vendor and took the suggestions made during multiple working group meetings and came back to us with this proposal that they'd like to incorporate into the documents. So this creates varying degrees of ramp structure. It creates a tunnel that is accessible, that someone could utilize either able-bodied or in a wheelchair. It also creates opportunities for disabled students to interact with some of the ground level items that are part of the playground, as well as upgrading the sort of overall quality of the play structure that was proposed to begin with so that it provides more opportunities for play. Some of these swings here are, you can transfer from a chair if necessary. Some of these ground level elements, and you can see the use of the tunnel. And also there's a seating area that can be used by able-bodied students, or also you could bring a wheelchair up to it. We reviewed it with the working group, and they were in favor of proceeding with this play structure. So we would just be looking to endorse that with the committee as a whole, so that this would replace what is currently proposed in the north playground. It also adds additional shade structures that were not part of that original playground that was proposed. So all in all, it just provides a what I think in the working group's view, and I'll let the working group speak to this, just a better solution overall for meeting the goals that we talked about at the last meeting. I don't have an exact dollar figure. I believe Ashley came back to me with that this structure overall is 300,000 for all the elements shown. It would be, I've got the overall, so all the elements shown, which if I remember correctly, I thought the original play structure was somewhere in the $200,000 range. So it is a slight increase, but in the confines of a $116 million project, it's not a significant increase, and the town would very likely get much better pricing should we be able to incorporate this in bid, as opposed to waiting until after bid to incorporate it, given the complexities of installing this, the multiple foundations and other elements that go into building a playground. And I hopefully can answer your questions. As I stated last time, I'm not your landscape architect, but I believe your landscape architect is currently out of the country.
So, before we get to questions, Susan, if I could put you on the spot a little bit, because you've been closer to this type of work than I think anyone on the committee. I know the working group gave its endorsement, of which you're a part, but if you wouldn't mind just confirming that this would accomplish what we're trying to.
Yeah, the nice thing about this structure is it provides multiple elements for all children to play. And that's really, just having, more touch points where the kids can gather is very helpful with the structure. Originally, it just seemed to have a long runway ramp, but now with those elements that Chris pointed out, it does give the kids multiple areas to play together on this structure. So yes, it's well done now.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee?
I've got a question. Chris, thanks for sharing this information. Is this the entire amount of structures we would have for the playground?
No, and that's what I'm bringing up in the background. Bear with me for 1 second. I want to bring up the presentation that I shared last time.
Thank you.
So comparatively, last time we talked about the playgrounds are made up of 2 playgrounds. So the initial playground, there's the north and the south play areas. So the south play area is made up of multiple structures. And at the last meeting, we walked through the various elements that make up that playground. And then originally we had this sort of climbing structure, which was various logs and ropes that allowed for climbing. We had a smaller play structure, and we had swings. And I believe that's a spinner. Okay, so these are a lot of the elements that are on that south playground. And then as we, sorry. And so as you walk through it, there's various chimes. There was a large shade structure. There was a balance climber. Then there was also a slide of sorts, a swing and a spinner, and then swings as well here. And that makes up that south playground. And then this, which I shared in the last meeting packet, so you could refer back to that, highlighted the various skills that the playgrounds are designed to support and develop. And then within the, thought I had a separate one for the, within the north playground, originally there was this sort of agility trail. So it was various rope ladders and other structures that you could move through. There was a teeter-totter swing element, and then there was the tree deck climbing structure, as well as a set of swings. So the structure that I've outlined in today's presentation would replace the elements that were shown here with that comprehensive solution that is pictured.
Okay, I guess a different way of asking my question or getting to what I'm looking for is what they're proposing for this adaptive enhancement. Would it be for 20% of all the structures for the school, or 35 or 50?
Well, what it does is it deletes, let me see if I can bring them up on side by side. So the structures that you see depicted here would be in place of the structures depicted here.
Okay, thank you.
And so that's 50% of the playground, but it's not a 50% add to the playground. It's swapping out the playground that's proposed for a different playground.
Right, but that's 50% of one of 3 playgrounds. It looks like we're
2.
Oh, 2. Okay.
2.
Okay. Thank you.
So overall, it's not a drastic upsize of the playground. It's finding better solutions within the planned playground to deal with it. And I did have an email at some point that was somewhat difficult to read that should have showed the final layout. And I apologize for not having that queued up, but it would probably take longer than it's worth to find it for something that didn't convey it all that well.
Other questions? Chris, can you, I think you had up earlier like a high shot that showed the north and south, the placement of the north and south playgrounds
Yes.
together. Can you flip
Yeah,
back
there
up?
was one other item that I wanted to touch on
Yeah.
as we're talking about this. So, a further discussion that occurred in the working group that is still developing, that we'll get into as part of the ad service, is that we have this north playground up here and the south playground down here. We're working on integrating this type of structure into this playground. We've also discussed this field in the middle.
Hang
One of
on,
the things,
before you
Go
do
ahead,
the
John.
field, before you do the field, I just want to finish up the playground and get because you want an endorsement for that. So the one reason I asked you to bring this up is just because I think for people who may be following along, the idea of calling them the north and south playgrounds makes them sound, at least to me, if you didn't know this design well, far away from each other. So what you can see here is obviously in this view that when we talk about the north and south playgrounds, it is sort of one reasonably connected recess complex that the students would have access to. So it's, I think that helps people get a view of, it's not like we have one adaptive playground and one non-adaptive playground that, they're going to get directed to, students are going to get directed to one or the other, that we have this, that the playgrounds are reasonably near each other. I do want to talk about the field thing, but I think we need to do the overall endorsement separate from that. Does anyone have any, I guess, concerns or objections with the committee endorsing moving forward with this adaptive playground structure in the bid? Okay. Not hearing anything. I think we can consider that, Chris Everly, the endorsement of the committee. I think the one thing I would just add is, as you outlined it, is there's a ballpark cost increase of $100,000. While this is a $116 million project, and that might seem like a small percentage, the committee continues to take very seriously any dollars we subtract or add out of this project. Speaking for myself as a member of the committee, and I think others have echoed this before, this feels like the right place for us to be spending that extra money. This is something we should be striving for in this facility if this is an educational facility that's going to carry us forward for the next 30 years. So I'm pleased that we're able to do that.
Through the chair, I would echo that, and I think it's very thoughtful and it aligns with the larger vision. And this gives a good opportunity to also, as I heard, the continuity. Should we build it in Marathon, then the kids gets to enjoy that and continue that experience here. So I fully appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, you want to talk about the field now?
Sure. So we'll cover this more at the end when we talk about some of the additional designer service requests. As part of the working group discussion, one of the concerns that was raised during our playground discussion was the fact that we have this field in the middle, but under this field we're using we have various well fields. We're also using some of the drainage structures are being located under that field. And the landscape architect pointed out, as part of a discussion about whether it was worth bringing irrigation to that location, that it was going to be a challenging field to keep green. Some of those who attended the school tours know that at some of the other schools that we visited, when you put what would be the 400 children that will be out here for recess in one of 3 recesses, so 3 waves of 400 children, that grass is going to take quite the beating. And without irrigation, it's challenging to keep it green and beautiful. One of the suggestions was to consider potentially adding a turf field in that location. We discussed that option amongst the working group, and the working group was in favor of moving that forward. In discussion with the group, I'll take the blame for it. I forgot to bring it up at the last meeting. But the working group did believe that it should move forward. And in speaking with John, he also endorsed the additional service for that we'll talk about in a minute. The idea of replacing it with a turf field would add longevity and a little more durability to it, similar to the turf that you have at Marathon currently that surrounds the playground. Because turf is quite expensive, it could potentially be a 6-figure add. We thought that the most economical and sensible option to move forward, considering an option such as that, would be to do it as a bid alternate. By doing it as a bid alternate, when the contractual price comes back and we see where our bid actually is, the decision to upgrade to that field could be made by the full committee at the time that you're accepting the bid. And that way you have cost certainty about what that upgrade actually costs at the time that you're accepting the bid. In discussion with the committee or with the working group, that seemed like the most reasonable path forward to consider that type of an upgrade in quality and durability without committing the town to proceeding with that if the cost came in too high.
Any questions about that? Again, just a consideration in the bid so we can get both pricing on it and have it in the context of what the overall bid costs before we decided whether we actually wanted to make that change as a full committee.
I think it's a great alternative and a great way to price it going forward. I'm just curious, do we have this option on other things as well, or is this kind of a one-off to have that extra upgrade option for this project?
That was the only one that we chose to include as an alternate. It was sort of discrete in the sense that you could capture all the edges of it, and it was a straightforward sort of swap out, so it was easy to issue alternate drawings just for that purpose without it becoming so broad. The way alternates work in Massachusetts public bidding is that if you pursue the alternates, you have to pursue them in order. So as you add on additional alternates, you can end up in a situation where even though you get a great price for alternate 2, you can't pick up alternate 2 unless you also pick up alternate 1. And so it can become quite complex in terms of how you strategically order those alternates to make sure that you have the one you have to get first and the one you want to get second. We didn't really identify any other major scopes because I think overall we have a fairly comprehensive project here before us, with a lot of those decisions made over the several years at this point that we've all been working together to get to this solution. And so purely as it related to that alternate or to that change, an alternate made the most sense. Other ones you could consider would be like swapping out various surfaces for other things, but in the confines and reminding the public that we're, I think, in the neighborhood of $8 million under budget. A lot of those smaller swaps don't really seem like that big of a deal in the context of the estimate coming in as low as it did.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Other questions?
I have a question. What would the cost of the turf be compared against? Is it the grass field with the irrigation line extended to it or without?
Currently, it's the grass field without the irrigation line extended. There was a design for irrigation that was developed by the landscape architect, but we decided to not move forward with the piping. We only moved forward with the well. So currently what we're planning is water to establish the plantings is going to come from that well that we're incorporating into the project. That well will also serve for water source for dust control around the site during construction, but we weren't actually taking remote water lines to various locations on site.
Okay, thank you.
Well, just to follow up on that, so is that suggesting that even if we had irrigation, it would be hard to keep those fields green because of the use? So that's why the irrigation is not even being considered?
Honestly, it's a tough question to answer, Phil. I'll give you the Hopkins example. Hopkins is in the confines of a wetland on multiple sides. That field stays pretty green in the amount of time that I've been out at that Hopkins site, even with our fairly active 4th and 5th graders on it every day in a very confined area with the construction ongoing. I can't say with any certainty that you'll struggle to keep your field green here. With irrigation, you will struggle less, but that's not to say that irrigation is a necessity. It's a very wet site now, and a lot of the material changes that we're talking about are going to alter that slightly. The concern is always that, kids wear a path in that dirt. I think you see that at playing fields probably throughout town. I know I see it in the playing fields throughout my town with the heavily used fields. And so I think that's why we talked about the turf in the context of being an upgrade, because you're going to have longevity, and the school administration supported moving forward with that turf as an option to consider. So to say that the grass field is a failure or won't work or I wouldn't say anything like that. But the turf would be an upgrade that would, in the same way that Marathon's turf playground is, stayed pretty good over what is almost 10 years now.
Bill, I would just add, the maintenance of these fields can somewhat be difficult. We can't necessarily bring in like a true green and use chemicals on these fields or any of the school fields really without without like a 5-day notice prior to putting anything down. So what happens to these fields a lot is when we first install them, they're great, and then they start to get overrun with clovers and then weeds, and then they die out, and then rocks start coming up. The ground becomes uneven, so it just becomes difficult to maintain or somewhat costly to keep those fields smooth as like a playing field. What I liked about making that turf over grass is even the maintenance of the entire playground becomes a little more simple. We're not blowing grass clippings and stuff all over the playgrounds, driving equipment, trying to get in there with the amounts of recess that we have, trying to get in there and get that cleaned up in between recess classes can be difficult. And so I think there's many reasons where turf makes sense. I think it's a playable surface all year round. And I think even for accessibility from playground to playground, it'll keep a smooth transition if we did have a smoother transition if we did have children that were somewhat, impaired to be able to go through without having to come out to the pavement and go down and around. So I think it's just it makes it an overall nicer space, I think, on top of it, and more usable for longer periods of time.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
Other questions? Any objections to putting this in as an ad alternate? Okay, then Chris Eberly, I think we're good to go with this one.
All right. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and open up the one document that I forgot to open. So I mentioned earlier, I sort of covered our next topic, which is abutter mitigations. We're going to be reaching out to the two who are most affected by our discovery of this intermittent stream and the effects of that as it relates to the Conservation Committee's wetlands bylaws. That way we'll be able to reach out to them and get an understanding. We're also still working on the street improvement package. We don't have a bid date for that yet, but one of the additional services will move that along tonight, assuming it's approved. We did want to make a suggestion as it related to the abutters that we've done in some towns. And I'm going to preface this suggestion with our experience in proposing this. What we have done in some communities, when you get to about this time, is we have proposed to the neighbors to do an existing sort of pre-construction survey of their property so that we can understand what the level of quality that it's at, so that they can have a record of what their house was like at the start of construction. In the event that the vibration, I'm not sure if blasting will be necessary or not, depending on how much rock we find. Certainly the breaking up of rock can have a vibration effect that was noticed by the staff at Hopkins as we were breaking up rock there. And so to mitigate that, given that we're so close to so many homes, what we have often recommended is that the school committee or the town go out and do a survey or offer to do a survey of the adjacent property owners' homes. What this is usually involves is a third party goes in with a video camera and just reviews the houses. Think of it like a simplified home inspection, like you were purchasing a home. And they'll just, with this video camera, they'll do an audio notation of any noticeable cracks, water damage, separations, cracks in the walls, floors, ceiling, so that we can eliminate any misconception about what was or was not caused by construction should an issue arise on any of our neighbors' properties. We find that this falls in the sort of $500 to $750 per house cost based on who takes you up on it. And what we've done in the past is we'll send out a letter that we'll work with the municipality to draft, and we'll send it to each of these homeowners, and we'll offer this survey as a service based on a proposal that we'll reach out to a vendor and get for the city or town. We have found that this is some towns are interested in it and some towns are not. We've seen reception to this include I don't want to let anyone into my house. I don't want you to see, I don't want to let this stranger into my house type of reaction. We've also seen some committees don't want to take on the liability of having someone in someone else's private home up front. They'd rather deal with it as an insurance issue as it arrives. It's, there is value to having that information collected, but it's really on a voluntary basis. We can't force the neighbors to accept something like that in the same way that, it doesn't prevent any issues from arriving. It really just serves as something that is a record. The record can be left with the neighbor themselves, or a copy can be held by the town based on a discussion with those neighbors about how it wants to be dealt with. And we find that some communities like that, and some communities are like, I don't want any part of that. I won't name names, but we've seen both. The other question that comes up when you consider something like this is how far to go out from the site. So obviously the most impacted are likely to be the neighbors who are going to be closest to where we're paving for roads, where we might be doing vibratory compaction or digging up large rocks out of the earth. We're also doing the street improvements over the course with the widening of the lanes. So potentially you could be dealing with not only direct abutters to the property, but you could also be dealing with abutters off of the right-of-way improvements on Hayden Row that stretch basically from EMC Park to just south of 149 Hayden Row. It's entirely up to the committee to share whether you would like to pursue this. We can certainly provide vendors that we've used in the past to collect this information if you'd like us to seek that proposal. Alternatively, we could also just do nothing, continue on with construction, and as neighbors bring up issues, investigate them on a one-off basis, as you would for any related construction. I know that's not a great sales pitch for doing it either way, but I personally actually don't have strong feelings on this. I was in the why would anyone want to let anyone to their house camp when this was first suggested to me. But I know that we've used it successfully and not successfully in the past.
Did we do this? Did we do anything like this for Marathon?
I don't believe that we did.
Mike's shaking his head, so
You're muted, Mike.
you're still muted.
No, we didn't do that, Martha. And the other thing is the Toll Brothers project, which comes close to the school. I don't suspect they did that for the rest of their neighborhood because they're doing a lot of the same things. Extensive excavation, compaction, significant hunk of roadway. You know, where do you decide who did what? I really don't see the need for it. I think it maybe cause more problems than otherwise, but I go by whatever the majority of the board feels. You know,
Thanks, Mike. Other views?
Yeah, it'd be nice to go in and take pictures and see if people have had water in their cellars. So when they claim they never had it before, we can deal with it. But again, it all becomes insurance, even at that point. So I'm not sure it's money well spent at this point. It's just my 2 cents. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with Mike on that. I think the complaints that we had from Marathon School opening was they didn't think that we were there were some neighbors that didn't believe we were capturing the offshed of water appropriately. So I know we kind of went through some things with that. So, but never any complaints about damage to any homes from any of the digging or the vibrating or whatever it had been. It was more water issues.
Okay. Any other views?
Yeah, without these surveys, is there anything else that could be relied on to settle some of these claims or deal with some of these claims? For example, vibration monitors or any kind of instrumentation if you're working in close proximity to some of these properties.
If we end up doing blasting, there's certain regulations that require that they monitor within a certain radius. I don't know, Dan, if you remember those rules. I think it's 250 feet.
Well, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it's close. It's pretty close.
And
Like
so you could do that vibration monitoring. What I can tell you is that, different soil stratas transfer it differently. Not my OPM group, but we have other divisions within Vertex that are more insurance based, and they actually do these analyses of, if a vibration from this piece of equipment is happening here and the strata of the earth from here to there is this much, it's reasonable to expect this much vibration this far away. But that calculation or assumption can also be done after the fact, which is usually when it comes up. Someone claims that, oh, your shaking cracked my wall, but then you do the math to prove out that, well, actually, no, it's probably not possible for my shaking to have cracked your wall. Your wall was probably cracked and you just didn't notice it. So this is why some communities are really on top of it, and other communities are like, why would I want to bother these people? Or why would I want to invite claims is the other thing that we sometimes hear.
Yeah. Others? So, Chris, what are you looking for here? Guidance or?
If you would like us to get a proposal, it's really about how many homes should the proposal initially be for, and we'd move forward on sending letters. If the committee doesn't feel that this is necessary at this time and that we shouldn't include anything special, any specific outreach to survey the neighbor's property, then I think that we're this issue's closed. If you'd like us to investigate a middle ground, we can certainly add into the bid that the contractor needs to set up some monitoring stations at the perimeter of the site to make sure that they're not creating excessive vibration, but then that becomes, what's excessive.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, Chris, I had a question. Do you have off the top of your head, how many homes you think would be involved? Is it just on that side of the street, or would it be across the road as well, potentially?
No, we talked, Laureen had pulled up an image for me. Let me see if I can track down it. I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 homes. There's also the issue that we discussed internally that I don't know that I have a great solution for, which is let me bring this on screen. Didn't do a count ahead of time, but you'd essentially have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 over in this area. 1, 2 existing homes. You would have the new Toll Brothers homes, and that was the piece where we weren't really sure what the right solution is there, because the existing Toll Brothers homes are new construction, but you won't know whether it's not really, you can't really survey an in-construction home, and you similarly can't say whether the quality of their construction led to an issue or if it was an effect of us that led to an issue. So I don't know that we have a great solution there. And then it would be all of these homes along Hayden Row, which, depending on how far you choose to go out, I don't know off the top of my head whether DPW has sought this type of information in the past when they've done road work. I doubt that they have. And so, we might be opening up a precedent there as well.
Well, I guess my simple question is, what's the best way to protect ourselves? Is it just through proper insurance to cover potential claims? Or is it or offering this as an option for people to have their home surveyed beforehand?
I don't know that I have a great answer for you, Bill, in all honesty. It's an option that provides additional protection if you choose to move it forward, and purely moving it forward doesn't necessarily mean that all these folks are going to take you up on that.
and when you say protection, I mean,
It's
it
a moment
potentially
in
offers
time.
additional insight. Like it's not clear that it offers additional protection. That would be sort of situational.
Well, no, it would if they're claiming a crack in the foundation, and yet there
That was already there, right?
There. Yeah. So I guess if all you're looking for is a consensus to have a bid, I personally don't see any downside in getting a bid for what it might cost, and then whether the committee agrees to offer it, that's another consideration.
Yeah, I think I would agree in that more information is beneficial. So again, getting the bid would be good. I just, and I don't know if this would affect the bid at all, but I would feel pretty strongly that we exclude the new construction Toll Brothers development, because that just feels like impossible to actually, as you said, you can't really survey an in construction home, and it's a brand new development.
Now, so we can certainly get a proposal, and I can bring it back to you at the next meeting. The other question would be whether this is the right radius to consider, for lack of a better term, or the right boundary to consider in terms of the homes that we would include. The building itself is roughly right about there. Dan, don't judge my architecture.
That looked pretty good, actually.
So the building itself is likely there. You've got the roads that circle it. I think the most impacted are likely the folks in this neighborhood downstream.
Yep. That's where I would focus this, is down there.
Potentially, you could also include the neighbors who are, going to have the traffic rumbling through on 147, and potentially the next step up would be to include all of Hayden Row that's going to be within a certain distance of the scope of the roadway improvements. And when we've gotten this in the past, pre-pandemic, it was about $400 a house. I would think at $500 to $750 a house is probably about where we'll see it today. Start line you might consider because they're a little bit closer, but I don't know that we're gonna have a heavy amount of construction right up against these houses with where we sited the building.
Chris, how will that quote come in? Will it come in per house as you suggested, or will it come in as a lump sum?
Usually it comes in as a lump sum and then there's a per house number along with it. So if we, we buy it out for 20 homes here and then 10 people say no, we'd adjust it as such.
Okay.
And we might want to reach out to the town, and just because we're reaching out directly to residents and offering them something, we might want to get a letter through town council to do that. I know we did it with some of our notice letters early on when we were talking to abutters.
Yeah, we can connect with Elaine the next couple of days. Well, actually, probably not even the next couple of days, because right now we're going to do the bid. So,
Chris, can I ask a question? Is there no liability borne by the contractor for damage done to houses around there? Don't they have insurance for that?
They do and they don't. So their means and methods can be dictated in terms of what they are and are not allowed to do in the bid. But we don't tell them what their means and methods are. And so when you talk about something like blasting, if they don't follow the rules and the blasting results in an unfortunate circumstances, yes, they'd have liability for that because they should have followed those rules.
Yeah.
If you're taking a virgin site and making a parking lot and you're going to run a vibratory compactor over it, or a better example, the lower side of this, because we're into a hillside, is going to be raised 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So for every 6-inch lift, they're going to take a vibratory compactor and drive it over it, starting at about 4 feet below where it is now to clear out all that loam and stuff. Yeah. And then 6 inches, drive a vibratory compactor up and down it. And that has some tendency to, those vibrations carry through the air. If those vibrations are ultimately what damages the house next door, that's not really the contractor's liability because he didn't do anything wrong. He was just following the ordinary means and methods that one would pursue to build a parking lot or raise a foundation. And so in that case, you end up in a, is this the town's fault? Was my basement already cracked? Was it cracked because of what you did, or was there something else?
Yeah. Sure. All right. Thank you.
And Chris, to extend that scenario, should anything or any claims come, I understand, this photographing or video recording the houses would create a baseline, so there's no false or fraud claims. But should there be a legitimate claim, then which insurance would eventually cover that? Do we need to purchase a separate one, or it's already embedded in the things that we are doing?
Say that, what type of claim?
Say, in a scenario like that, eventually there is a claim.
Yes.
So which insurance will cover that claim?
I don't know off the top of my head. It really is going to depend on the circumstances of the damage and the claim. I would have to reach out to MIA or MIIA, who's currently pricing up the builder's risk. I would think it would be more likely to fall under builder's risk if it's the ordinary process of construction and it creates an issue there. But I would want to ask that question specifically of the town's insurer and have them make sure that we're covered if that's the concern. And I can also, make this suggestion to, I think I'm working with Sean at Cabot Risk to get the builder's insurance or the builder's risk claim now. So I can reach out to him again and say, this question came up. We're considering pre-surveying some of the neighbors. How would that relate to any claims or pricing that we're going to get for builder's risk? When I bring that pricing back to this committee, we can have that answer.
That sounds good. Yeah, I think this is a good risk mitigation strategy. But the first risk is, if something happens, how are we covered? And second is, if something happens, even if we are covered, how do we cover any false claims or legitimate or address the legitimate claims, which is this one. Both are, I think, helpful, but the first one is probably going to be more universal and needed. And for this one, I think the more information with, the bid and others certainly is going to help, as I understand it, and process it a little bit.
Okay, Chris, do you have clarity on the next steps?
Yep, I think so. We'll reach out to get a the one thing I don't have clarity, do we want to extend it to the full roadwork scope, or do we want to just limit it to the immediate neighbors for the purposes of the initial proposal?
I mean, my personal thought is immediate neighbors. So maybe worth checking with the town if they've done anything similar on road work that has been done recently.
Yeah, I think if the town's never done this for road work anywhere else, I would be hesitant to do it here.
I agree. Okay.
My vote would be for immediate neighbors. My experience, it's usually based on a distance. If you are within certain distance of the active construction, say 500 feet, then it's more of a concern. But if clearly some of these residences are not within that threshold distance, then I would say prioritize the ones that are closest to active heavy construction.
Yeah, I would really, when I first started talking about it, we looked at sort of like the center of the site to 1,000 feet, really started to become those four. Maybe you extend it down to include, I think it's 9 houses in total that are down here.
And Chris,
Yeah.
pardon me if you already answered this, but were there any claims from the Marathon project?
The only issue we had was water, and the circumstances of that are a long story that I don't want to get into now.
But not structural with any homes in the area?
I don't believe so.
No, nothing that was ever brought to our attention.
The vibratory compactor is always the one I point to because people find it unsettling when everything starts shaking a little. But I don't know that I've ever actually seen a direct claim that I can tie to that.
Okay.
Because they're not driving it next to your house. It just feels like they're driving it next to your house because it can carry through the soil. All right, so should I start with these 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. What's next?
Next. So next is to walk through a number of additional services that I'd shared these with you, John, but we're so close to the meeting that I thought it made sense to just run through them with the
Yes,
committee at
please
this
do.
point. So I have 5 in total. I am expecting one more, and I forgot to write down who it was from. So when I get to the end of this, Dan can tell me who I forgot. So, starting with VHB. VHB is traffic engineers working on the roadwork improvements. As you may recall, we had an extended back and forth with Concom as a result of trying to get through the right-of-way improvements, and Concom kept asking for additional as it related to catch basins and trapping the suspended solids before they were discharged into the adjacent stream. We thought country drainage was the right way to go. We proposed multiple versions of that. We proposed a few alternatives, and ultimately they asked us to do a study of the additional catch basins that would be required to deal with that extended stream study to get through permitting. They're requesting a $6,600 additional service for additional engineering work that's related to that original Concom right-of-way approval. My view is that I think that that's reasonable. They were very diligent in doing this work. They tackled it without delay, which I think helped us get through that approval. And so I think the 6,600 they're requesting is reasonable. I should preface all of this. I didn't do the math ahead of time. So all of this is subject to Perkins 10% markup that's allowed by contract. So it would be 6,600 plus the 10% due Perkins for that particular one. I can do these individually, John, or I can just sort of run through all 5 of them.
Just roll through them. Just roll through all 5 and then we'll do questions.
The next one is Amendment 3. So this is related to clarifying a scope gap that I don't think we identified in the initial proposal discussion with Perkins. We had originally thought of this as an extension of the building project scope when we put together the DD through construction administration amendment after the funding vote. They're requesting what amounts to $5,000 for the base scope of putting through the front end, and then they gave us I think it's 17,000 for additional CA. This would be to develop the front end documents that relate to the street improvement work specifically. Right now, there isn't really anyone to come up with the Chapter 30B, Section 39 front end document. So this is the contract, all of the terms and conditions, all that kind of stuff that we worked with Perkins to create on the building project. This would be to create the same for the street improvement project, which is going to be run with a separate contractor. It would also cover them doing site visits and inspection of that work and basically running it as they would any street improvement project that they were hired to do in any other town or in this town, because they've done them in the past. So in total, that comes to 22,000. And we would recommend that proceed because it was not on the original proposal. We think it's necessary to move forward. Traverse came in with, I believe it's 22,000 for the turf design. So that's 16,000 to develop the design, $1,000 for the bidding support, then an additional 5,000 for additional CA that would occur over the course of the installation. They originally came in with a higher amount, and we discussed it with Perkins, and they eventually came down to that amount. So that was 22,000. That one I know, John, you did verbally approve. Samiotes, the next 2 relate to the identification of the stream. The first was for Samiotes, the civil engineer. They immediately jumped into action to identify the stream, develop the documents that we needed to go before Concom for the notice of intent to ask for the administrative review, and then jumped into the documents that we needed to stay on schedule with the Concom work that we're doing. They did flag 2 additional items in addition to the $8,750 that they're requesting, which could be from a 6,000 to 12,000, and that's if the Concom process requires them to revisit. I think it was the sewer line. I don't know if you remember the other piece of that, Dan. If Concom expands their scope, I think they had 6,000 to 12,000 extra that they were indicated that they may pursue, but I don't believe they're pursuing that at this time. And then in addition, there was for the Concom process to go through the additional approvals with Concom. LEC, the environmental consultant, is asking for $9,700. I did not push Claire to get me that proposal because I thought getting that to Concom and staying on schedule was the more important approach. But she did provide an email to back that up, which I included in your packet, and she'll follow up with a proposal. So in summary, items 1 and 2 essentially are $31,460 with markup in order to deal with additional services, specifically around the street improvements. Items 4 and 5 is $20,295 with markup, and that's specifically related to our intermittent stream discovery and the Concom processes and rebuilding that drainage pipe that are related to that. And then separate from that is the, did I write down the number here? Separate from that is $24,200 for the additional service related to the turf field, with $6,600 to $13,200 in the background that could result as the result of Concom asking us to do more should we move forward. So we'd recommend combining all of the items together. That would be Perkins Amendment number 8, totaling $75,955. And so we would commit this to, we had within Perkins budget, so the designer budget, we have an other basic services line item that was for things that come up over the course of construction. We have $83,500 remaining in that, and so we would use that budget category should the committee approve of what would be Perkins Amendment number 8 for $75,955. The only other piece that I could see potentially coming that I remembered as I walked through all of that is BSC, the surveyor, had to go out and do additional work to locate the flags and put them on a plan, which they did, and so there could be a cost coming for that. I don't think you sent that to me yet, Dan.
BSC?
Yeah.
No, but there definitely will be an ad for that. That's for sure. He was out there for a day.
So that could be, you
And
know,
up in the drawings.
3,000 to 5,000, I would
I
think.
was going to say
I
it's
had to
probably going to
guess.
be 3,500 to 5,500 or 6,000 bucks.
So Chris, just want to confirm what we're looking for here. So, are you looking for a vote on the amendment?
It'd be cleanest to just do a vote on an Amendment 8 as it relates
Okay.
to the 5 additional service proposals, or if you want to do a vote to authorize the chair for final sign off on the proposals as outlined pending receipt of the final proposals, or I can give you better.
Well,
language than
let's
that,
do questions first. Any questions about any of those that Chris just listed? Okay, hearing none. How about a motion? I mean, it's tough to approve contract amendment number 8 because we don't have contract amendment number 8.
Yeah, I know. I thought of that as I was saying it.
To approve the expenditure for additional services as listed in the agenda materials and authorize the chair to sign the necessary contract amendment.
Or approve the proposals as outlined. in
Approve the
meeting packet.
proposals outlined in the meeting packet and authorize the chair to sign the necessary contract amendment?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Shahidul, second by Mike. Roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters,
Yes.
Shahidul.
Yes.
Okay, and I am a yes, so it is unanimous. We are 6-0 now, Chris Everly.
All right. And that was
Start calling you guys just by your last names.
that was Shadul, and who was the second?
Mike.
Okay. I was writing the motion as you were doing that. Okay.
Bidding update?
That takes care of that. So bidding update, I sort of covered this at the onset, but currently we are looking, I want to make sure I get my dates right. With the Concom effect, we're finalizing a lot of those RFIs and questions that come in. We've gotten a healthy number of questions, I would say, to date. We discussed it earlier today with Perkins, and right now we're looking at setting a deadline of the 22nd for any questions from the filed subbidders, and then we're going to push back their bids until May 2nd. I think it doesn't just give them, but it gives everyone time to work a little longer on getting the bids together. GC questions would follow. Usually that date follows the filed subbidders because we put out an amended, or we put out the list of the filed subbid results, and then there's often questions that come in as a result of those. So that date would be May 6th, and the final GC bids would follow on May 14th. So as it currently stands, I would look for the committee to meet again on probably the 20th. And
Okay.
that would set us up pretty well to review the bids and potentially approve the contract at that point.
Okay. Any questions about the bidding process? Okay, so we'll look to schedule that meeting as close to the 20th as we possibly can. And the last item on the agenda is just any miscellaneous project updates that we haven't covered.
And I have one. So previously the committee approved ADS to be the licensed site professional for soil sampling and characterizing on the site. They were able to get out and do their review, and they issued a draft letter. The draft letter does cover a laboratory issue that they ran into that they were able to resolve. But the results of that letter are that they did not find any significant contaminants that are outside of expected environmental levels, and they expect that the soil can be disposed of by any legal means with no hazardous materials that they identified in their testing that would need to be accounted for in any other way. We are going to continue to carry a small quantity of unit price in the bid that's there to deal with, you know, a pocket of something that we might identify. You know, maybe there's something we find adjacent to the house when we demo it as we're pulling the foundation, or some other costs associated with that, or something that got left in a field that nobody remembers. But generally that's great news for the town because it means that we don't anticipate any special handling or special material disposal requirements associated with the site.
That is good news.
The other I touched on was that we did complete the hydrant flow test. We were able to do that with the water department. We're grateful for them helping us out on that. And those results came in, and I don't believe that they changed anything about how the design had conservatively figured the water level. So also good news.
Yep. Okay.
And with that, I believe, Dan, unless I'm forgetting something, or Peter, I think that's everything.
Okay.
So John, we have tentatively a meeting on the 13th of May. That probably wouldn't happen now.
Yeah, that sounds like that'll be backed out to
Yeah.
align better with the bidding schedule. So we'll get that finalized as soon as possible.
And I think I had floated at one point that we might meet on the 29th, but with Concom being that night, I don't think it makes sense. The only thing that we would share at that time would be the filed subbidder results, but even that, I don't think we'll have at this point. So, on barring some issue that needs to be determined by the committee, I don't anticipate needing to meet again until we get to the 20th.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I would seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, motion by Bill, second by Shahidul. Our final roll call vote of the night. Bill,
Yes.
Jagroot,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris,
Yes.
Shahidul.
Yes.
I am a yes, and we are adjourned at just flipped to exactly 7:30 p.m. Thank you to HCAM and thank you to everyone for joining. Have a good night, and we will see you in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.